We are recording this session, and that's for the purpose of us to be able to put up on our members section of the website. We will transcribe the session, and then we pull out some of our favourite parts to share on our social media channels so that people who weren't able to come today are still able to access the session. In terms of our kōrero today, we're really grateful to be joined by two wahine Māori who are doing amazing mahi in their respective areas to provide better digital accessibility for people. We have Wainui Witika-Park from Catalyst, and we have Chanel Kaa-Luke. And so I'd like to open the floor for Chanel to introduce herself. Chanel is joined by Jeremy, who is our awesome NZSL interpreter. So kia ora, Chanel.
Kia ora koutou, kia ora Katie, kia ora everyone. So I feel really privileged to be invited to come along by Wainui. And so we have done some work together in the past, so it's great to be together here again today. So yeah, kia ora. So I whakapapa to Taranaki and to Gisborne, but I was born and raised in Ōtautahi. And so my family are all hearing, so I'm the only deaf person in my family. And currently I'm working at Ko Taku Reo, Deaf Education New Zealand. And I'm the Māori Deaf Liaison. And so there's lots of discussions with iwi and Māori organisations, and just to sort of network and build platforms in terms of how we can increase accessibility, really, just ensuring that policies are inclusive and what it looks like for Māori deaf students to have access, really. Yeah, so that's me. And also, yeah, no, that's all. That's me.
Oh, kia ora, Chanel. And also just note in the chat that Chanel and Wainui have provided us with some kupu Māori for deaf and blind people, sight impaired, and for tangata whaikaha, who are people who are living with a disability. So yeah, get those ones down. I'll pass on to Wainui to introduce yourself. Kia ora, Wainui.
Kia ora, Katie. Cool. So take two. I was starting my introduction when you were popped off, but cool. Yeah, basically no here o ki te taha o tōku papa, ko taupiri te maunga, ko waikato te awa, ko tainui te waka, ko waikato tainui te iwi, ko Ngāti Pāua te hapu, ko Waiti te marae, and i te taha o tōku mama, ko Taranaki, rawa ko Tuao Wharepapa, ngā maunga, ko Motueka te awa, ko tōku maru te waka, ko Te Ati Awa te iwi, ko Pukitapu te hapu, and ko Te Awhina te marae. So yeah, ko Te Wainui Witika-Park, tōku ingoa. I am Te Wainui. I go by Wainui sometimes, but feel free to call me Te Wainui or whatever you like. And yeah, Chanel was gifting me this. Wainui was my name in NZSL, which is awesome. And yeah, so I am low vision. I was born with severe myopia, short-sightedness, and I learned to walk with probably being able to see about, I don't know how much this is, I always say that, about 6 inches or so in front of me. So I learned to walk without having a lot of vision, and I got glasses at about 1.5 years old. And ever since then, my vision has just been decreasing. And as I kind of became an adult, it's been rapidly decreasing. I have used a white cane to navigate my surroundings in the past. I haven't really had the need to use that in the recent past because I've technology is getting better, and so my vision tools have kind of progressed, and so that's really cool. But I struggle with my vision every day, and I'd love to share about that with everyone. But yeah, I'm a software developer. I work at Catalyst IT, based in the Wellington office. And I work on a software called kōrero, which is a library software. And I'm also just very passionate about accessibility and ensuring that everyone thinks about it. And especially as Māori, I think it's very important for us to get it right. Yeah, I think that's pretty much me.
Awesome. Kia ora kōrua. Oh, he pātai from Chanel?
No, I just forgot to say, actually, after everything that you'd said, just wanted to say my iwi. And so, yeah, Ngāti Paro and Ngāti Roa Nui. Yeah, and Ngāti Ruahine. So those are my three iwi, and I will explain a little bit more about my journey of being deaf and my family and use of sign language and that sort of thing. So I'll incorporate that into my answers to some of the questions throughout.
Awesome. Kia ora. Awesome to know your whakapapa from both of you. So just extending on what you were talking about, Wainui, we're here to talk about accessibility. So I'm really keen to know, what does that mean to you, and why is it so important to get it right?
Cool. So yeah, accessibility, in particular digital accessibility and accessibility online within the technology kind of area, is basically how we put into place that everybody can access information digitally. A lot of the times it's in written format, a lot of the times it's just in audio format, and this isn't accessible to everyone. So yeah, I struggle with vision and Chanel struggles with hearing. So two kind of completely different areas where we wouldn't be, if you are only relying on one certain method of communication, one of us would be struggling to get the information. So in terms of like digital accessibility, you can kind of in a way compare it to physical accessibility. And I think, for example, a good example is if you're crossing at the traffic lights, and there usually, hopefully, there are a number of different ways that you are alerted that you are able to cross the road safely. So there are things such as audio, the beeping noises, as well as the light. So you can visually see that you're able to cross. And then there's also things like tactile, where you can put your hand on the little vibrator button, as well as on the ground. Sometimes there's the flooring and on the ground can at least alert you that you're at a traffic light. That's probably the extent that we go in Aotearoa with traffic lights. I recently spent some time in Hong Kong and China, and there's some cool things out there that kind of increase accessibility for that. But yeah, if you think about it in a physical space, we take that online and digitally, and I think especially we're all in digital and tech really, or most of us, and there's so much information coming, there's circulated, and it is very important that everybody has access to this information, not just those that are physically abled or abled in one certain area. And I think what is very, very important to me is that as a Māori wahine, we're already behind in general in Te Ao Pākehā. We're already losing out on information, knowledge. We don't have a lot of access to information about ourselves and who we are. And therefore, I think it's so important that we need to be ahead of the game. We need to be up with the play, and we need to be accessible so that, our people have that information. And if we're not having it accessible for everybody, then there's no way that we can keep up with that. And it's, for example, when I go to iwi meetings or iwi organisation kind of things, I can't gain the information that I need to be where I am and then progress as a wahine Māori. And it's very disappointing and very hard to navigate this world with challenges already, and miss out on that vital information that most people seem to be getting. So that's pretty much why it's important to get it right. We need to be strong as a people and have all the information that is out there, really.
Awesome answer. Chanel, do you have anything to add to that?
Yes, I do. Yeah. So something that I'd really like to touch on is access to information. And I mean, we have a right to have access to information in real time. So receiving information at the same time that others do. Those who are able-bodied, they have access to information in real time, whether it's listening or seeing it. And we should have a right to access information in real time, like everyone else. And that's because we don't want to be left behind. We want to be right there in the pack, learning everything at the same time as everyone else. And that means that we can make informed choices. And as Wainui said, when we're wanting to participate in different hui or different scenarios, often I have to choose which area I'm wanting to go into. So, for example, in a deaf setting or in a Māori setting, I might have to give up one side of me. It might be my language, or it might be, visual documents that's available, or that sort of thing. And so accessibility is also, it's not only our responsibility, but it's also, we need to educate the community as well and let them know that it's their responsibility. So it's sharing that responsibility, I think, of accessibility.
Yes. Yep. All valid and awesome examples, and I that brings us on to the next question, actually, which is we've got Jeremy with us. He's a NZSL interpreter, and I'm really keen to know and for you to tell everybody why it's important to have people like Jeremy come to hui like this, and when should people in this room book an NZSL interpreter for their event or for their hui.
Okay, yeah. So really, Jeremy, or any interpreter, is not only here for me as a deaf person. The interpreter is here for everyone who's participating. Is a sharing of language between parties. And so it's not just for me to access everyone else, it's for everyone else to access me as well, so that I can express myself in a way people understand. So it's bridging communication. And it also gives me the ability to communicate in a way that I'm comfortable with. So I grew up speaking and lip reading, and I only started learning sign language when I was 13. And prior to that, I was having to work really hard to lip read to understand things. And when I learned sign language, it was like a switch came on for me, really. It was just a way I could express myself, my opinions, and be able to describe exactly what I wanted to say. And so having an interpreter there it's a privilege, I think, that, I mean, not all deaf people are able to speak or code switch. And so it's just allowing someone to be able to be comfortable in the way they're communicating. And interpreters do work very hard in our community, right throughout the community. So yeah, that is happening. And interpreters have different skills, different specializations and that sort of thing. And so it's important for deaf people to be able to choose their interpreters, who they prefer and what suits them or suits a certain setting. And so that means that booking interpreters, it's really important to book in advance. Sometimes you might need to book 2 weeks in advance. And the more in advance you can book an interpreter, the better. And then there's more time to give the interpreter and the deaf person time to maybe meet and clarify preparation, certain concepts, the purpose of a hui or purpose of an event, and where you will be standing and setting up the online scenario if it's an online like today. And so, yeah, I have a lot more I want to add, but I can see in the third question will potentially give me the opportunity to add more on that in that topic.
Awesome. So would you recommend, if people are holding a hui, putting the question out to their audience who have RSVP'd if they'd like an interpreter, and then letting that person or those people choose the right interpreter for them?
Yes, but then I would also say that if you are setting up an event, then is that event accessible for deaf people, and is it inclusive? And so do you have an understanding already of how to make an event accessible? And so beforehand, you can ask for RSVPs and say, would you like an interpreter? That's great. But then also, potentially, if you could establish your hui in being visual and providing information prior to a hui, that type of thing would mean that more deaf people would feel they can engage with the kaupapa well before. And yeah, and so, I mean, what if you have no deaf people come, and then it wouldn't be worth booking the interpreter? So if you had an interpreter, but it's not accessible and so people don't come, then there isn't really that point. So it's, yeah, it's sort of being holistic in the accessibility.
Awesome. Those are great whakaaro that we can all take on, I think. So we'll move on to the question number 3, which... Could
I just jump in with a little bit? Yeah, just to tautoko what Chanel was saying. I am, I guess, lucky enough to be able to communicate with Chanel over like messenger and text, because I do have some vision. But it is so much easier to be able to just sit on this call and not have to worry about using my vision. I can listen to Jeremy, the interpreter, and Chanel and I can communicate in real time in a way that isn't exhausting us. And it's just really, really cool.
Exactly.
And
exactly.
Yeah, and I kind of when I said that I wanted to invite Chanel onto this session, that she would need an interpreter, and that's not just to put just to speak for her, that's that I need that interpreter as well in order to be able to communicate easily with Chanel. So yeah, it's just so beneficial and makes it a lot easier.
Awesome, thank you. So it's definitely a two-way thing. It's about access on both sides. Love it. Yes, we will move into our next question, which is, as tangata whaikaha, how are things online for you? What are some common things you run into or things that organisations get wrong? I'll start with you, Chanel.
Oh, okay. I think, yeah, I mean, Yeah, I've only started accessing interpreters online at the start of COVID, really. At university, I was a bit stuck and in a bit of a flap and thinking, okay, this is all new. How do we arrange things online? And yeah, it's learning about how to pin certain screens and all of those other technical aspects to being online. And yeah, so one thing that I've noticed a lot actually is, I mean, I love the fact that, say, you book an interpreter for, say, an hour, and is that the only work that they need to do? Is just that hour of live interpreting? It's not actually. They can't just turn up on the spot and interpret, and that's it. So there has to be time prior to make sure that interpreters understand the language and the context of the setting. And also, in terms of the person who's booking the interpreter need to be aware of that it's not just that hour the interpreter's on for. Yeah.
Awesome, thank you. Wainui.
Oh, so how are things online for me? People that know me know I go on and on about accessibility all the time. And in all honesty, they're not great. I work in tech. I do web development a lot of the time, but I am constantly frustrated. And unfortunately, a lot of the organizations and platforms that are lacking in accessibility happen to be kaupapa Māori. And I honestly think, I've said this in other hui before, but we already as Māori are working so hard to kind of keep our culture alive, but also like keep up with the play, and kind of compete in the Pākehā world. And we're already doing so much. So I think that's where the lack of accessibility comes from. Also, accessibility, it's not a new thing, not digital accessibility, but it's kind of only starting to become something that people are actually kind of starting to care about. And that is very shaped in Te Ao Pākehā as well. And so most things online are pretty bad for me, to be honest. The switch between using a computer to a mobile device is hard when they aren't built to work amazingly on both. So yeah, it's one of those trade-offs again. And I struggle every day with doing things, even though I'm a tech person and I should be able to do like all these things, I can't because of the way that things are visually represented. I don't use a screen reader like some other blind people do, but when I go in and check how the screen reader works for a lot of websites, honestly, most websites, whether they're affiliated to Māori or not, they're just really bad. And so I feel privileged that I can have a little bit of vision and can see some of the stuff, but at the same time, it's just like not really good enough, and yeah, I just struggle every day. And I think that, I work in software and web. And so I have gone on this journey to gain these skills, but yet I don't have the access to a lot of things. And therefore I'm unable to use these skills that I have as a Māori developer and get these skills across to people, I guess. And I think it's so cool that there's not a lot of us in tech and digital that are Māori, and like obviously not to turn my own horn, but I think it's just cool that I have these skills and have gone through that journey, and I don't want to waste them. I want to be able to get all the information I need so that I can give information to others. So yeah, I think, for example, a document, just a document, so not even talking about a website, but like just attaching a PDF or something. People like to squash information into one page to make it look pretty. And yeah, I guess like talking to your designers and everything, looking good and pretty is important. Like, we like things to be visually pleasing and that attracts certain audiences. But sometimes it's not the most accessible thing. So if you have more than one, so a document, if you're squishing up sort of text boxes into one page, how do you then get a screen reader to read it in the correct order? Or how do you copy and paste it, put it into another document? That requires me going and getting somebody else to do that. That's taking them at least like half an hour or 5 minutes if you're my friend, Alicia. But I don't know, like it's just adding more and more work. And so, yeah, I think the thing is that think about accessibility and not just how things look. And yeah, I think that's one of the most basic examples, really. Also, this is a call out to Hapori Matihiko, but we forgot to add image descriptions to some of our social media things. So totally fair enough. Like, I'm always forgetting about these things. Like, I'm the worst person at doing image descriptions because I kind of just can't really figure it out in my head what that image is and find the words. But yeah, I think basically yeah, just such a simple, my main point, sorry, I go off on a bit of a tangent a lot, but if you just have like a small piece of document that might have been a printed piece of paper or something, but that's online, that should be accessible. Just words going down, the screen reader can pick that up much easier.
Awesome. Just to extend on the point you made about image descriptions, this next question is about our hapori digital Māori. We've got a bunch of people who work in digital here. What are some things that they can do today, put into practice today, to improve accessibility on the whole? And I know image descriptions is just the very basic thing that we can do. I'll start with you, Wainui. Oh, sorry, Chanel, you go first.
Yeah.
Okay, got it. Yeah, so I suppose I just want to touch on Māori digital spaces, and maybe you've seen before when Wainui introduced herself and I introduced myself, the use of language, a little bit of te reo, and interpreting. And so, like Wainui said, a lot of Māori kaupapa organisations are mostly inaccessible, really. And so it's really difficult to engage with, just because for me, I have a double language barrier to navigate. So trying to go between NZSL and English, and then te reo Māori as well. And so it's often the English can be translated into sign language, but then the te reo Māori can't so much. And so there are only a few Māori concepts that have signs connected to them. And so, for example, when I do my pepeha, and I mean, I rely heavily on finger spelling for that. And so that means my expectations are for the interpreter to have the skills to be able to pronounce te reo Māori correctly. And sometimes I need to check, has that gone all right? So, for example, I have worked with Jeremy before, and so we know each other relatively well. But there are some other interpreters who, I I mean, I need to check, or potentially the organisation needs to check. Are you comfortable with this interpreter? Is this interpreter confident in using this language? And if not, then potentially the organisation needs to provide translations for karakia and those types of things, and provide the kaupapa and like I say, the waiata, those types of things. But it's just, how I can engage and making sure that I have understanding as well. And the only way that I can understand is through NZSL. And so I suppose there needs to be adaptations made. And so a tip that I would make is, in Māori digital spaces, I would say make sure that you are considerate on the abilities of interpreters and also deaf people within that setting, and also providing contextual information prior to a setting will really help deaf people navigate that space. So here in New Zealand, we actually only have 3 trilingual interpreters who are fluent in all 3 languages. And so it's just so difficult to book those 3 interpreters. And so they prefer to pick up work in a Māori kaupapa space, and that's fine. But then there are other spaces where we're relying on the current team of interpreters, the other interpreters. So we need to make sure that everyone is feeling comfortable in those spaces. And also, if I was to just consider an online setting, Zoom or Teams or Skype, then I think the best way to make that accessible for me as a deaf person is sort of maybe 4 things, I think, that I could suggest. So make sure that the lighting is adequate. And so before this session started, I checked with Jeremy, are you able to see me okay? Is the background all right? Is the lighting okay? Are you seeing enough of my head and torso? And a lot of deaf people, they don't rely on sign language. It's more lip reading. And so they need to make sure that the lips are clear and well lit as well. So it's making sure that the movement, body movement, facial expression and everything is coming across clearly in that video frame. And if someone doesn't sign, that's fine. But it's important for everyone to have accessibility visually, especially considering that online. Because if there is light coming from behind a person on Zoom, then it can be very difficult to lip read because a person's face becomes darkened by that. And when I see that, I think, oh, okay, things are blurring up a little bit to me. And, sometimes when people blur their background, the setting on Zoom, you can blur a background. Sometimes if someone's signing, then it's difficult because the fingers blur in with the background and you can't see distinctly what someone's signing. And so, there's those things to consider as well. So they're just a few tips.
Awesome. Thank you, Chanel. I'll pass to Wainui for her tip.
Cool. So, speaking about having digital hui, which I think is such an important thing, because you'll often think about digital accessibility, and that, well, to me, is like, how is your website accessible? How is your social media accessible? But before that, when you want to speak to some people like me and Chanel, or anybody really, and you want to be gaining information from us, we need to have that kōrero first, really. And I've literally been so cried before because I can't access a Zoom call. And so, I think that's just something that is just such a vital thing to think about, is how can we actually discuss accessibility with those that are passionate advocates or experts on accessibility? How can we bring them to the table? I think nothing about us without us, that comes up and with being Māori a lot, and it kind of works the same way. We need to we need to be at the table first, or the virtual table of the room. And so that's why I think, yeah, we're really, really pushing how can we have accessible meetings. But then we take it to, yeah, our kind of web accessibility and stuff like that. So as I said before, please put your documents in like top down, even if it's more than one page, that's okay. Redundancy is okay. So sometimes people think, oh, if I've already gotten a written piece of information, why would I need to have a video talking about it or a recording of it or anything? Or for example, if you have a video, why would you need to have it in written form? But it's so important to do these things. So if you are somebody that is a developer, you can look into the guidelines of web accessibility. It's called WCAG, and there's more information about that. But for example, headings. If you know about coding and tagging headings, so we like a lot of people kind of coding up their website and they want to make certain headings look bigger or smaller, and they tag it with something such as like a heading level 1, and so that's the biggest one. And even if that wasn't the main heading of the page and kind of the main umbrella of what the page was talking about, some people will often use that to make it look how they want. But when you go and use a screen reader, it's completely messing up your way of understanding that information, because it's telling you this is the heading level 1 and it's just about other links or something like that, for example. And so I know that's very kind of pointed towards more web developers and things, but I think it's just like we need to think about the purpose of what we are doing, and why we want to structure information in a certain way. Is it because it looks better, or is it because we want people to know the context of information? So I think, yeah, a practical thing you can do today is kind of just think about the trade-off between visually pleasing things and whether it is accessible or not. But yeah, so I guess, yeah, number one is, yeah, having image descriptions is a big thing, especially if it is, even if it is a image that has text in it. So a screen reader can't necessarily pull that, some AI can, but can't pull that text off of the image. So if it's just an image and it says all this information, how does someone without vision get that information? Also, I think a really cool example was when for the Mātauranga Awards, and I think it was UKD, was you had posted a post and it said all of the people that were nominated, and then you made a video with the names and you also spoke the people's names. And so for me, that was cool because I didn't have to bother reading the post or watch anything. I could just listen to you, kōrero, about who were nominees. And that's a great example of how it might seem redundant because you're repeating information, but actually it's very cool. And if you have the ability to gain information in different formats, such as if you are sighted and hearing, it's not really it's not hurting you, you know, like you can just pick and choose which format of information you want. So
can I comment on that?
Yes, of course.
Yeah, you're right. If I just add to that, sort of tōtoku what you're talking about. So in terms of videos, so often there's written text and videos, but it's also important to consider captioning videos as well. So sometimes I think, oh, I would love to engage with that. I've read it, but this video, I don't know if it's the same information or not. Maybe there's a little bit of new information in that video and I don't know. And so just captioning videos, I think, is really important. Yeah, just to ensure that people have that option.
Yes, that's thank you. Totally. And that kind of brings back to what you're saying is gaining that real-time information as well. And sometimes, yeah, it's you have the audio and you have the visual text, but yeah, how do you know that you're synced up with that part of the video? Yeah, so again, captions as well as transcriptions, just throw it all in there, all the ways of accessing information. Like, it's honestly fine. I think, yeah, I personally think that you can't have too much. No, you can have too much information, but you can't. You know what I mean? It's not too much ever. Yeah, I will stop.
Awesome. Thank you so much. So one of the things that we do is use alternate text. And so LinkedIn has alternate text. Facebook and Instagram have added this, but it's not always perfect and it doesn't work great. Would you recommend we do that? And then on top of that, add in the comments an image description as well? Is that helpful to use the technology available, but also as a backup, pop in the comments, the description in the comments as well?
Yes, definitely. I have seen a lot of people do that, like famous people that are blind do that, and yes, I think that is a great idea. That's not harming anyone, and then if you can't gain that, also I don't use a screen reader, and so I can see the image, but I can't necessarily see the detail sometimes. And then if I'm not using a screen reader, sometimes the alt text won't just appear for me. So to have it in the comments right there is really awesome.
Great, thank you. We have two questions. One of them was actually on our list of questions anyway, and then another one is an audience questions, and then we'll wrap up from there. So this one's from Alicia. So she said, Kia ora kōrua, could you share some of the examples of digital spaces or initiatives that have been accessible? And I'll start with you, Chanel.
Okay, yeah, so I see that links to the question there. And so I've been mulling this over actually, and I think that there are a number of different spaces that have different examples of what it means to be very good in terms of accessibility. So for example, my university where I've been studying online, they've been amazing. They provide transcripts and they'll provide lecture recordings with captions and extra notes. And so it means I can still engage online in the digital space. But then there's other areas where sometimes, I mean, I know I work in deaf education, but still, I suppose they're still learning how to make things accessible. And so it's, yeah, so I suppose it's important to have more awareness on how to provide things in a deaf space and setting up captions and transcriptions and all of that. And it's considering the extra work that goes into that as well. But it's setting up your space, the lighting, a round table so that deaf people are always able to see each other. Deaf people just love it being in a circle so we can all see each other. And so that's an example of good accessibility. In the university space, that's a really good example, I suppose, for me, and how to engage online. And there's a number of different places, I suppose, that they have differences in what is good in terms of accessibility. Hopefully that makes sense. I mean, I don't think that I can just think of one place who are just amazing that they cover everything. I don't think there's one that stands out, no.
Thank you, Chanel. I'll pass to Wainui.
Yeah, I agree that I don't have any amazing examples, unfortunately, because there is a trade-off, as I said, and yeah, if something is accessible for me visually, it's probably not that accessible or sitting completely right as a Māori wahine. In terms of if you are a web developer, I suppose the website that gives you the guidelines on how to make an accessible website is probably a good example. If you use some like accessibility tools to inspect those websites, it would kind of show how things just flow nicely. And I guess like it also a lot of the time it can still look quite good as well. Like I think that's what well, to be honest, I work for a company that offers accessibility services. So we do have a lot of knowledge and skills to be doing really good. And I think I've lost my point. So we're doing pretty good, but it's always a learning curve. But basically, there are ways to make a page look very pretty, and then underneath it's accessible. So you wouldn't. It's not just kind of a page that's just words going down. It could look some information up here, information over there, but yet when you go behind the scenes, it is accessible. And I think that's what's really cool. Like it should just be kind of integrated in the background. But yeah, unfortunately, there are no amazing examples that I can share. And I think that's what I wanted to share is like part of my frustration that I don't have a holy grail of an amazing accessible digital space. Yeah.
Well, I think the good thing is, Wainui and Chanel, is that there's a bunch of people who work in digital and tech listening to this call and are hopefully planning pathways of how they can make their digital worlds more accessible because of the knowledge that you've been able to offer. Chanel, love to hear from you.
Yes, I did actually want to offer one really good space, I suppose, to find lots of what I've talked about. So the Office for Disabilities, so they, in their website, they have a sign language tab that you can click on. And so there's lots of guides and how to use interpreters and make information accessible, how to set things up accessibly. And so that's a really good place to find how to make your kaupapa accessible. So that's a good resource for you. I can't hear you. Sorry, Katie. I think you're on mute.
I'm on mute, yes. I'm going to share, ask our last audience question and then open for final comments from both of you. So this question's from Belinda, and she said, I'm curious, many of our marae, hauora Māori organisations and hapu use Facebook to communicate pānui. Am I right in assuming that Facebook is incredibly non-accessible? And then a further partai is from Andrea from Wild Bamboo, assuming that LinkedIn is just as inaccessible. Why not?
Yeah, so That's a hard one. For me, yes, it's really inaccessible in the way that you have to keep up with that, those comms coming through those Facebook pages. I use Facebook for personal, social, kind of like talking to my friends. So to have to remember that a very important iwi pānui is coming through Facebook is very inaccessible. However, for me, I rely on using my phone, my device a lot. And because I am somewhat sighted, I can just read it like very close to my face, and using social media is actually kind of accessible for me. I actually would prefer reading something, how Facebook structures it, as opposed to emails. But then emails are so much better in terms of kind of the context, because I would expect important pānui to come to me through email. So I think that if you use the Facebook and the link and the Facebook, if you use Facebook, LinkedIn, or any other social media, incorporate other forms. So send emails that say exactly the same thing. Offer a link to a website that might have a recording, a video with captions, text. Offer multiple ways to get that information so that each individual can choose how they want to access that information. But yeah, Facebook and LinkedIn, not very accessible at all, but I think that they are very good assets to have that information on as well. So yeah, just put it on multiple places.
Yeah, yeah. I would say it is a bit of a hard question to answer, I think, but I think if I gave an answer, it would be around the use of language, I think. So, for example, our community, we do suffer from language deprivation as a whole, and the deaf people have had their language deprived, but it's similar in the Māori community historically as well. And so it's just making sure that you're using a structure of language that is accessible. And yeah, so I suppose I would use both of those platforms, I suppose, but it's making sure that the use of the language is, sometimes it can be quite complex. And so in terms of my iwi, I know that sometimes the ways they write Facebook posts, sometimes for me, myself, I'll look at it and I think that's confusing, just the way it's written. And I do actually have a pretty good understanding in terms of literacy and English and all of that. And I'm able to piece together language that's not so logical, but that information is quite complex sometimes. And as Wainui mentioned, I think it's having alternative sources, so Facebook and email and other sources as well, I think. And sometimes it's understanding whether a post is social or if it is in a more formal context as well, and what's more appropriate for those specific kaupapa, I suppose. And so, yeah, certain platforms, the community may be a little bit hesitant to engage with. Sorry, you're on mute again, Katie.
Sorry. I will leave the last minute for both of you to share with our audience any final thoughts or things you would like them to take away with them today as part of our Mātauranga session. I'll start with you, Chanel.
Okay. Yeah, well, really, I would just say if you're uncertain about what a person needs, just ask them, I think, and they know what they need. they know the best way they can give advice. And for me, being able to engage with a certain propu, I can engage with website links and that sort of thing, But I would prefer to say, well, actually, this is what I like. This is how information works well for me. This is how I can access information best. And so if you're uncertain, just ask, I would say. And also, I'm actually being kicked out of my room. This is a meeting room and I'm being kicked out. So I'm going to have to quickly say, kia ora. Thank you so much, everyone. To Jeremy for interpreting today. Thank you. Great to see you again, Wainui. Yeah, great kaupapa today. Kia ora. Okay, thank you. Kia ora. See you later.
Well, yes, so I'm a metering too, but whoever is booked in can wait.
Can I just clarify? Sorry, would you like me to carry on interpreting for this part, even though Chanel's gone?
I mean, sure. I think why not?
Okay.
Also, it's being recorded as well, so for that. Basically, yeah. Ask if you are unsure. But also try and take the exhaustion away from, like, for example, I don't want to keep thinking and explaining myself every single time. If I've said in the past that I need something, maybe ask me and check, oh, is that what you need again? Help us to not have to work so hard, I guess. And for me, I think, yeah, it's about thinking about the individual. And so for me, anything really online is harder than having a phone call. I would just prefer to just have a quick call and get the information through to someone. So I think, yeah, just acknowledging that everyone, like, we're so different, and we have different skills and different access needs. And also I would say, just as we all are all quite digital, follow some people on social media that there's the Arts Access, All is for All, Blind Low Vision New Zealand, you can follow Catalyst IT, and just absorb what people are saying, what whakaaro is getting put out there. And I think the more you tune into the tangata whaikaha community, the disabled community, the more you'll start to learn. And yeah, unfortunately, there aren't just things that we can tell you to do to help us. Today, there's not, just a checklist and a guide handbook. But the more you put yourself in the space and just absorb what people like me are saying, understand how frustrated we are, and just think about implementing accessibility first and foremost. Accessibility isn't just for disabled people, it's access for everyone. We all benefit from it. And yeah, as I've said, I think we can't afford to leave some of our people behind because there's already a limited number of us, and we need to have access to information. And yeah, just keep coming to these kaupapa and listening to us speak is just amazing. And for us to get our stories out there and listening to us is probably all that we can ask you to do, and keep thinking about accessibility. And thank you, for everyone for showing up and listening. We appreciate our frustrations and our whakaaro being heard.
Kia ora, Wainui. I love that point. Accessibility is for everyone. It's not just for one group of people, it's for everyone. When you make accessible things, it benefits everybody in our community. So thank you. I just want to extend a huge mihi to you and Chanel and Jeremy for coming today and sharing your mātauranga with our hapori. This is such an important conversation. We will spend time and transcribe and put everything up on the website so that more people can access this. We think that more people need to know about this. The absolute right people are in the room as well, people who are passionate about getting it right for our tangata whaikaha. So thank you so much. And I hope that, you know, you can start to see some changes in making your world easier and more accessible. So kia ora. I will close us off with a karakia, and then I will send you off on your day. So thank you so much, everybody, for joining us. Kia ora. Ko motu a mātou mahi mo tēnei wā. Mana ki tia mai mātou katoa. O mātou hoa, o mātou whānau, aio ki te aorangi. Tihei, mauri ora. Kia ora, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you. Ka kite.